There's this, if you want to understand, and I've said this 1,000 times, and I will say it 1,000 more times, how elections have consequences. Today in Florida, the state Supreme Court moved forward in saying that Crosley Green, a black man who was sent back to prison after his murder conviction was overturned, can't get out. That's right. First of all, the Florida Commission on Offender Review denied his parole. Now, this means that he is not going to be paroled until 2054, when he will be 97 years old. Who appoints this board? The governor. Who's the governor? Republican Ron DeSantis. Folks, elections. Why can't the Florida Supreme Court intervene? Guess what happened? A couple of years ago, 3 liberal justices all retired around the same time. DeSantis filled those positions. Now there is a hardcore block of conservatives on the state Supreme Court who will do what DeSantis wants to do. Joining us right now, folks, is Keith Harrison. He is one of the attorneys for Crosley Green. He joins us here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. So, Keith, what can happen now? The federal court said he got to go back. They can't do anything. What now?
Well, thank you, Roland, for covering this important case. And, you know, this is a case where you have an innocent black man who spent 19 years on Florida's death row, total of 32 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. And there's a lot of evidence. And in fact, the federal court ruled in 2021 that he was wrongfully convicted. But that ruling was overturned by the 11th Circuit, and he was released pending that appeal. He was out for 2 years, was a model citizen, fully employed, went to church every Sunday. And, during the 2 years he was released, certainly he should have been a perfect candidate for parole. But the parole commission in Florida, we had a hearing yesterday. We argued his case, but we were unsuccessful. And, what is next? We are going to continue to fight for his freedom. We're going to continue to fight for justice on behalf of Crosley Green. We are going to continue to try to take our case back to the parole commission. We're also looking at other judicial remedies. And there is also clemency as an option. That would have to be approved by the governor. And so, we are going to pursue every possible avenue to try to get this innocent man freed.
Now, let's go back. A federal judge ruled that he was innocent. So first of all, what did the federal judge actually say?
So, Judge Dalton, federal court judge in Florida, ruled that crucial evidence pointing to Crosley Green's innocence, had been withheld by the prosecutor, not turned over to the defense. And one of the bedrock rules of our criminal justice system is if there's evidence of innocence, it has to be turned over to the defense. The federal court ruled that he could not conceive of evidence that was more exculpatory, more crucial than the evidence that was withheld in this case. And the evidence that was withheld were the prosecutor's notes that the first 2 responding police officers that got to the scene surveyed all the evidence, and they concluded, because of what they saw and what they observed, that there was no black guy as the surviving witness said, and that essentially Crosley Green was innocent. This was withheld from the defense, even though one of these officers testified. I mean, imagine what powerful cross-examination evidence that would have been. That would have transformed two white police officers from witnesses for the prosecution into witnesses for the defense. But it wasn't turned over. Federal court said that's unconstitutional. I can't imagine anything that would have been more material to the defense in this case. The 11th Circuit, 2 years later, really over 2 years later, ruled that, yes, this evidence had been withheld, but it would not have mattered ultimately to the case. They ruled that it was immaterial. They reinstated his conviction. Yes, believe it. I mean, it was hard to believe. And then we appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court did not hear the case, even though we had over 100 law professors from across the country file briefs supporting our case. We had over 20 former state and federal prosecutors supporting our case. We had 5 former state Supreme Court judges from states like Texas and Missouri supporting our case, but the Supreme Court did not take the case. So that is why Crosley Green had to go back to prison after having his conviction overturned and leading a productive a productive life as a model citizen for 2 years. He had to go back to prison. And then yesterday, despite an unblemished record for 34 years, both in prison and out of prison, the Florida Commission denied his parole.
So you said that the only route is clemency, but that has to be granted by the governor.
That is one of the routes. There are other. The parole commission. There's still room for the parole commission to do the right thing, and we're going to continue to advocate as much as we can before the parole commission, and we're going to see what other remedies might be available. But clemency is certainly one of those remedies. It's the remedy of last resort for any criminal defendant. And we're not going to leave any stones unturned in our efforts to get to get Mr. Green's freedom.
Keith Harrison, we surely appreciate you joining us, updating us in this case. Thanks a bunch.
Roland, we appreciate you following this important story.